Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
G'day, how you going? It's Phil Tarrant here. I'm the host of the Smart Property Investment Show. Hope you're well. Podcasts by investors, for investors by investors. I sometimes forget which one I am first. The catalyst of this podcast, the brand Smart Property Investment, started way back when, coming out of media journalism, and as myself as a property investor trying to make a few bucks in property, trying to work out how to do it. And I used to pick up the magazines, anyone who remembers them. And I used to sit there and scratch my head, and there only seemed to be success stories in there. So I thought there's got to be, the cynic in me said there's got to be more to this. And I thought, well, let's do it. Let's put our money where our mouth is as well, and invest ourselves. We built a portfolio, and for those of you who've been sort of dialed in for many years will know, we've talked a lot about it, and it's sort of going through some changes at the moment, of which I will be reporting on shortly. We're selling some properties, doing a lot of refinancing, and it's very much connected with the trials and tribulations of this market, being dialed in with it, looking for opportunities when they arise, and continuing the property investment journey that we started. So watch this space, and check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. There'll be lots going on, but as I've been working through that, it just reminds me how important the team is that you have around you to make sure you're making the right investment decisions. I've been dialed in with my accountant a lot, buyer's agents, my mortgage broker in particular. The team over at Finny Mortgages are probably sick of me at the moment because I'm pestering them about refinance everything back to interest-only mortgages because I'm not really happy with the cash position of my portfolio at the moment. But this team I surround myself with has been key for how I've invested in property. And one of my jobs on the Smart Property Investment Show is to have discussions with those type of people that do this for a profession. And why wouldn't you be using someone smarter than you to help you make probably the biggest financial decisions you're ever going to make? And I'd like to think over the last sort of decade that we've been running Smart Property Investment, I don't want to be a fanboy on buyers agents, but I know some of the best investors I know are dialed into these capabilities, and it's a growing industry, and we're very fortunate that more Australians are now choosing buyers agents and advocates to help them make better purchasing decisions. And when markets are tough is when you need someone on your side. So I have joining me in the studio today someone who operates absolutely within that space, Lynda McNeill. She's the director and founder of Inview Property Group. She's made the trip up from Melbourne to come and have a chat with me in our Sydney studio. Lynda, how you going?
Good, thanks for having me, Phil.
So you're a buyer's agent?
Correct.
If I was to run into you at a social function and said, "G'day, I'm Phil, I do podcasting," you would say, "I'm Lynda, I'm a buyer's agent," or something else?
Yeah, certainly. So buyer's advocate, but also specialise in helping clients on the journey of vendor advocacy as well.
So both sides?
Both sides.
Okay, so you help people buy properties and then you help people find the right agent to sell their property.
Correct. So it's more about putting a strategy in place for where they're at in their life, I guess, whether they're entering the property market as an investor, first home buyer, or they're actually at the other end of selling down their portfolio, looking to, move on from where they are, and they really need a clear plan for that.
Do you think most people get the back end of their property investing journey wrong, or they don't strategise enough for it at the start?
Yeah, look, the key is having a plan and understanding why they're selling, why they're buying, what they're looking at doing, and rather than going in blind. We see that a lot where, they've had an investment portfolio for a number of years, but they haven't really understood how they got started at the start and what their end goal was. So the biggest key to our service is with our clients when they come in is working out, the why, the what and the where.
And this is, property and property investment in particular, people try and overcomplicate it, and I think often unnecessarily. And if you're an investor and you don't understand it, there's probably, you can find out what the answer is. But your point there, that construct is the why, the what and the where. And if you can sort of build out property investment journey based on that decision making, is a nice construct to get it right. It's not that hard.
Definitely. And having the right team around you, getting the right advice at the start. So it takes all the guesswork out and makes the journey a lot more enjoyable.
So how did you end up doing this for a living?
Well, I started off as an investor myself at 19, built my first home, was very fortunate to have both parents in the industry and grew up understanding it from a young age, which I think watching my children at that age now, you can take for granted of having that knowledge on site. Then always had that interest, was always helping friends actually buy their properties well before I was an advocate. Had a background in construction and as a selling agent. And I found helping buyers, as much as I loved my vendors and gaining a really good result for them, I saw buyers sometimes making perhaps the wrong decisions and purchasing properties for the wrong reasons. So worked for a very large investment company in Melbourne, or a national company, and then decided back in the end of 2018 that I wanted to combine all my skill set to help people getting into the property market and making sure they've got the right plan in place.
So you grew up around property. Is that something you spoke about at the dinner table as kids in a family?
Yeah, well, Dad was always on building sites. Mum worked for one of the leading builders at the time, A.V. Jennings. So I was in and out of display homes, knew about stylists and all the ins and outs and the tricks of the trade at a very young age. So it was in our blood, if you could say.
So you used to on a Saturday go to, like, what do they call them, like home worlds and stuff like that, and just be where they'd be selling new properties?
Yeah.
Selling people's sort of dreams,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Selling their dreams. That's correct. I mean, a lot of that was more in the outer suburbs, new housing estates, etc. So, but seeing that from the ground up and understanding it.
Do you think you always had you're destined to a career in property? It's just one of those things that, do you remember sitting there as a kid going, I want to be an astronaut or a fire person or whatever?
Yeah, one of my early memories was actually sitting at one of the salespeople's desk at the display centre on a Saturday and, role playing as you did as a child, imagining. It took me a while to get there. I had a background in corporate for a while as well, and I think all of that was necessary to have that experience and growth to be able to assist my clients where I am now.
So it's a diverse, I guess, background in property. Is there any bit that you're more attracted to? You know, like you got the sort of the design and functionality of property, and that's more from a home to live in. And I know you do a lot of buyers advocacy work for owner occupiers, which is a very different proposition than investment, which is all about the dollars and cents, irrespective of what the property looks like. Is there anywhere where you're particularly drawn to, or any piece that you like more than others?
The main thing is I love working with all my clients on their journeys, whether it's investing or home buying. I certainly still put the investment hat on with the home buyers as well. So even though it's going to be their home, I also run the same visibility in terms of investment. Obviously, there's some allowances for that, but still the same rules in terms of things you can't change, things you can change, and looking overall at who is the buyer after them, because that's the most important part in how that property is going to continue to grow. And so I enjoy both the journeys. I strategise each client's journey to their needs and their end goal, and work closely with whether it's their accountants, their brokers, banks, financial planners, to make sure we've got the end goal covered. The journey with them and the crossover from my construction background of opening up the possibilities of perhaps buying something that has multiple ways of growing, whether that's through a cosmetic renovation. Some clients are taking on the full renovation extensions. So I've got a really good support team of industry network there. So I enjoy both. And then, of course, also the start to finish on when clients are selling down their portfolio or downsizing after 40 years and terrified at the thought of engaging an agent. So we're there as the sounding board to guide them through that on the vendor advocacy side.
Do you do much on sort of knockdown and rebuild stuff? So for owner occupiers, identifying really good assets, but cosmetic reno or major reno, or just get rid of it and rebuild, which I know a lot of people doing. They like the area, but they don't really like the house, right? So what do you do about it? You knock it down and start again.
Correct. And that's happening more and more at the moment as we've seen, a real shortage of stock levels. People love where they live, and that's the hardest transition then, is they love where they live, but they can't find that newer, product there. So we are seeing more people rebuilding, which is rebuilding a lot of the suburbs that, are quite old areas, and they're being rebuilt again. So that comes with a different level of feasibility and due diligence, Phil. So we're looking at, obviously the first point of call is back with their broker or bank to make sure they've got the ability. If it's the site they're living on currently, looking at the council requirements, consulting with architects, drafting, all of that side of it. And then also that gap in where do they live, have they got the funds and capacity to do that while they rebuild? And the main key is, are they overcapitalising, or are we going to be okay at the other end?
It's interesting because the big part of the focus of this podcast is people investing in property for the purpose of property investment to rent it out. And I'm sort of curious how many property investors use a buyer's agent or buyer's advocate for the purpose of investing, also use a buyer's advocate or a buyer's agent for finding their own home to live in, or if they think they can do it better, right? You must sort of see this sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of our investors, they come with that mindset that they're looking to buy an investment property, and that's the main focus point. And then when we get chatting to them, I had one last week only that reached out and said, I didn't realise, we've bought 2 investments, but I didn't really think about the fact that you can buy a home for us as well. So I think it's they can go on that single-minded path of what they're looking for at the time. With the home is a lot more emotion. So they do want to be part of that, but it's also where we can step in and take out the emotion that could be a costly mistake for them.
Yeah, and a really good buyer's agent, buyer's advocate can do both really effectively because, at a strategic level, buying a principal place of residence with view of it being an enabler for property investment is key. It's where most people start as property investors is through the smart purchase and holding of a principal place of residence. That gives them heaps of equity that they can therefore start investing in property. It can be the enablement to actually get them down the pathway of investing in property. So they're largely interconnected in many ways. And a lot of people on the other side use property investment as a mechanism of paying down their loan on their principal place of residence. So these two things work in unison. So it's probably best to club them up together.
Yeah, definitely. And, often you get asked, is the first property we buy the most important or our last? And they're both really important. The first one obviously is the foundation for everything. If you get that wrong, you can't, get that leverage for the next one, whether that be investment or first home. And it's hard sometimes where, younger clients that come in can't always utilise the services of an advocate, but to a degree they're the ones that really do need that help to understand and be able to identify what makes a good property.
Absolutely, and it comes back then to how you go about doing it, the why, what, or why, when, and what. I want to dig into that a little bit, Lynda. We'll just go to a quick break. Stay with us, everyone. Back in a moment. Welcome back. It's Phil Tarrant from Smart Property Investment having a chat with Lynda McNeill. She's director and founder over at Inview Property Group. You do stuff, no doubt, Lynda, all across Australia. I know you're from Melbourne, but you're not sort of wed to that particular area?
No, mainly Melbourne. Obviously, we be quite tricky travelling all across the countryside, but what we do find is a lot of our clients are repeat referral clients. So once we've assisted them in Melbourne, as soon as they're looking at different areas, we're their first point of call.
So you must be quite satisfied with that, where most of your business comes from people telling someone else that you're good, or they use you again, right? That's the best sort of business.
Yeah, definitely. They become like family, and really grateful for that element with the business, that for the last 5 years it has been referral-based, repeat clients, working through their journey. One client last week rang me for, we're at 3 years. That was our decision on our next property, and we were able to execute their plan even through, what we've been through in the last 3 years. They still had the growth we projected for the property. The broker went back. Everything was looking the same as it was at the start of the plan. So we're going again, which is great.
How do you keep yourself disconnected to a degree where you don't get sucked into emotionally in people's property investment journey? Because I know that must be a bit of a skill where you become a trusted source of information and guidance and mentorship and psychologist and probably often also a relationship manager and all this sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
How do you keep connected enough to know that you're supporting them on the property journey without getting too connected where it can absorb time, energy and effort.
If you ask my family, they'll tell you I get too involved. So at times it's, staying objective, looking at the end goal. Obviously, with the home buyers, that can change. You know, you can be looking in a particular suburb and end up buying in a completely different one. I generally make sure all conversations are with both decision makers. That's really important. And do delve in a little bit to the psychology side of it, of asking them, you know, what the main concerns are, what their fears are, going through all of that, because you do need to gain a really good understanding in what's holding them back or why they're after a certain type of property, even though you might not feel that it's going to be a good one long term, and then finding that balance in between. So we do take all that stress on at times, but I do enjoy the journey, and, you know, the best thing is once you've been able to execute their plan and how happy they are.
I imagine it's intriguing, the psychology of it all, and irrespective of the construct of the relationship, because relationships comes in all shapes and sizes these days. But if people are investing together rather than individually, do you see similarities in every scenario? Is there always someone who's quite passionate and gung-ho about it and someone else is a passenger, or, you know, you must see all different dynamics?
Definitely. And often what I'll do is one of the first things that we start off with the journey is with the why, is why are they looking to buy a property, whether that's the investment or the home, and they do fill out quite a detailed buyer brief, what I call a wish list. And I actually get them, if it's couples, I actually encourage them to fill it out separately.
So you ask for two. Yeah.
And then sit down together. And there can be a lot of key points there that they didn't realise what they wanted or what the other person wanted. So, you know, ironing that out at the start can make the process a lot more enjoyable. Yeah,
and I reckon that probably makes it a lot more enjoyable and a lot more effective, right? If you get to a point and go, no, I don't like that, I don't like it. So if you have a brief, and we're talking about here more for owner-occupier, if you have a good brief and you know there's commonality around these are the we must have and these are things that we can trade around the edges on,
yes,
it's going to make your job easier and faster and more effective and more decisive, and all that leads to probably getting a better outcome.
Definitely. And same with the investor side. Like often, you know, we'll hear clients come in, I'll ask why they're looking at buying an investment. And one of the most frightening things is all our friends are. We're at that age. And
does that happen a lot? Is that like the main reason?
Yeah,
right?
We hear, you know, friends are, our family members are, my brother's bought one. There's that almost that social pressure that
it's like keeping up with the Joneses still exists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's where I've seen a lot of it. You know, when they've come in and they've done that in the past, it hasn't worked because they're all at different stages in their lives. It could be their income, could be having children, could be downsizing, heading towards retirement. So without a clear structure and plan on where they're at in their life, you know, there's real concern of that actually being achievable.
And again, it's two very different outcomes, and the process is probably a bit similar between buying a place to live in versus buying a place in investment property. And so going back to buying a place to live in, what are the main whys around that for people? Is it more of I want a nice place to raise our family? It's probably the top one, is it? Or is it, I want to use the money to leverage and, you know, invest in property in the future? It's probably more secondary.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So mainly it's families. So they're looking at upsizing. They're starting to head towards the secondary school age. So they want to be in that community, want to embed themselves in a particular community, be certain distance for work, location, sporting activities, family, friends, that type of thing. Secondary, they're thinking about what does this look like for my future? And that's where, you know, with the home buyers, I'll actually sit down and have that discussion with them. Where do you think you'll be after the kids move? And, you know, that's a lot of people don't think about that. They're just thinking about tomorrow. So that's where I come into making sure that, you know, they have got the investment hat on, but obviously it's mainly the home. But where you can work around that, not just on the growth, is a floor plan that's, you know, a really good floor plan, an A-class floor plan, north-facing backyard, proximity to amenities, all of those key fundamentals again, that means that when they sell in 10, 15, 20 years' time, they are the buyer again at that time.
And do people get that? Because you see people buy some houses sometime and they might, we really liked it, but you sit there and just go, God, you're never going to be able to resell that. Or there's too many hairs on it that people are going to buy everything else before they buy that particular property.
Definitely. And my clients learn pretty quickly that I'm very transparent in that. I'm certainly not about high KPIs and buying as soon as they come in. I want them to buy the right property. They know when I've found a really good off-market or pre-market or even on-market property and it's ticking all the boxes because they'll get a pretty excited phone call from me. But in terms of clients that send properties through and say, we really like this, I'll be straight down the line with them in terms of the drawbacks and the concerns.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
So is your preference when someone says, hey, we want to use you to go and find a property, you would rather go away and do the finding of the property based on their brief rather than them sending you properties that they like and, hey, is this a good one?
Yeah, it's a joint effort. I tend to say to clients that so we set the strategy. We do a lot of feasibility on what is going to be possible. There's their three budgets, obviously. There's what their borrowing capacity is, their comfort level, and that's a really big one at the moment compared to perhaps when we're in the midst of COVID.
Yeah.
Comfort level is certainly being addressed a lot. And then there's the price, the value of the type of property they want on their wish list for the location that they want to be in. So we spend a lot of time before we go out shopping as such, showing them what's possible, sales in the area, what they can expect to buy for that budget. And then I'll go out and shortlist them, walk through the property, saving all that time for them. And then once we've done that first part of due diligence, if it looks like it's going to be possible, that's when we'll go through together.
So this is more of the what's, which sort of, I guess the when is before the what, because the when is probably connected with the why. Yes. But just sticking with why, and this is, I'm just curious about it. What's from an owner occupier sort of advocacy work? What's sort of the strangest must-haves that you can remember for a property like I don't want to get gender specific, but I reckon men are like, I want a really good sort of man shed and I'm going to just going to be really generalising. We want walk-in wardrobes,
steam
ovens,
last year. That's the conversation you start having about what can we change and what can't we change. So
like people just go, it needs to have a steam oven. You're going, that's got to be so far down the. It's steam oven. What's like $1,500 for a steam oven changing like. I don't even know what a steam oven does.
Lifts are a big one now for particular age group of clients. They want to stay in the area, but they're looking at, these are fit, healthy clients, but they're looking at the future of we don't want to move again. So can we put a lift in? Yeah. Is there a lift there or can we put one in? So there's a lot of extra groundwork that goes with that one.
Yeah.
Steam ovens was an interesting one for quite a while.
Yeah. So people are reasonably sensible. They're like, I need 4 bedrooms, a rumpus room, a patio. Don't deviate too far off what is normal.
There's not too many wild things with that. Sometimes the investment clients will actually come up with some more interesting needs, and that's where the emotion comes in. Probably rather than putting the true investment hat on. And they'll look at, if they like the aesthetic of the building or the kitchen or the colours and things, and that's probably when we need to guide them in terms of what makes a good investment and the fact that you're not living in it. We're still looking at what's attractive to owner occupiers when we're buying an investment because we're still always focusing on resale. Yeah.
So this comes back to the why for drill down on investors. When and I know you're super busy and you always clients banging down your doors, but when someone calls you up, I imagine one of your first questions is why are you investing in property, or why are you buying another property, or why are you buying now? And no doubt the cadence of the answers changes all the time, market dependent, but why are people investing in property from your view and your experience sort of in this immediate market?
Yeah, at the moment, the ones that are educated that have got a few properties already are looking at the opportunities. So with a lot of talk and fear around holding costs and new tenancy laws and those type of things, a lot of the first-time investors are quite put off by that. The ones that are experienced are looking at opportunity. There's opportunity now in the market.
What's the mood down in Melbourne at the moment? Because I know a lot of the states are looking at mandating rental freezes, and you've got the Greens sort of, trying to get a nationwide policies around freezing rents. The state governments are playing around the edges on it, saying, irrespective of the tenant, is going to be based on, the length of time that you're holding the property. So it gets really messy. Is that really worrying people?
It is. It's really concerning a lot of our investors at the moment because obviously their interest rates have gone up and then they're feeling like they haven't got the ability for the growth in their rental yield and return. And they're being sort of hit from all angles at the moment. So then we're seeing some looking at getting out. So the ones that are calling and saying, look, this is all really concerning for us now. Let's have a look at selling now. We're guiding them through that. We're having a look at where the property sits now. What does that look like for them? And then are they going to regret that and want to buy back in and potentially not buy the same asset class they've got now? So before we rush out and say, yes, that's a great idea, there's a lot of background that goes into that. Tenants in Melbourne too, it's interesting. I don't think we've got a huge rental crisis in Melbourne. You drive through particular areas at the moment, we were seeing a lot of boards up for rent.
Okay.
There's probably a bit of pushback from tenants because of the talk of freezing or the talk that, rents have gone up. Then they're questioning the rental amount that it is advertised for and they're coming in under, whereas, 12 months ago they were coming in above and offering more to secure. Still quite a bit of vacancy. We've got a balance of workplaces coming back into Melbourne, but the apartment market's still, quite fragile.
It's a bit shaky still, yeah, and it will take some time. But that infill will happen as migration increases and all this sort of stuff. But it comes down to the why, the why, but the when. So why are you investing? Okay, when, and there's a couple of different whens, isn't it? It's when you're able to invest, when you can afford to invest.
Definitely.
But there's also when it's the right time to do it for your budget in the markets that you want to operate within. So there's many, many whens.
Definitely.
That's your job to work that out.
It is my job to work that out. And, sometimes the when is, it's very different for, again, depending on what stage you're at in your life. So when you've got your finance sorted, when you have a clear understanding of what's involved is the main things we go through. So that's short-term, long-term, understanding the ins and outs of, buying in a body corporate situation, the added costs, etc. Often investors will come in and they'll say, this is my budget, I've got my allowance for stamp duty, and they're not really thinking about all the other fundamentals that go with that. And that's sort of setting up for failure, I think. So we go through all the scary parts and get that out of the way. And most of them actually come back and, they're quite confident then in what they're getting into, which is important.
And I guess having an appreciation for when breeds confidence, because once you work out all the what ifs and the whys, you can be decisive. But where a lot of people get it wrong is that they get that stuff right, but then they do the wrong the purchase, and they buy the wrong place at the wrong. They should be buying houses when they're buying units, and it goes on and on and on. So I really want to get into that, Lynda. We'll just go to another break. Stay with us. Back in a moment. Welcome back. Phil Tarrant from Smart Property Investment with Lynda McNeill from Inview Property Group. Why Inview? What's Inview mean, Lynda?
Inview came from the fact of wanting to bring properties into the view of clients. So you do all the strategy, wish list and what you're looking at buying, and then I look at it that my role is to bring the right property into their view. So.
Okay. And from an owner-occupier point of view, how do you how do you celebrate successes? How do you celebrate when you find someone their dream home and they move in, they go, Lynda, this is brilliant?
How do I celebrate? It's an interesting question.
Yeah. How do you go? So how do you get how do you get an appreciation for a job well done when you've cracked it and you've sorted the brief out and you've?
I think when I walked through, a good example of that was a few weeks ago, working with a young family in the inner ring of Melbourne, a suburb called Murrumbeena, and we'd missed one at auction, and then the next one round, I was openly happy to say to them, no, it's not the right property, and the reasons why. And we walked through a property, and as I was walking through each room, it was ticking those boxes of what they wanted, right down to a karaoke room.
Actually, a karaoke room.
Yes.
Really? That's a thing?
That was a thing for this family.
Okay.
Yeah. So as you're walking through and you're actually seeing that 10 out of 10 tick boxes, that's where I get really excited for the families, and that's how we celebrate that, we've nailed that brief for them. And then, of course, in their budget, one of the key things that I really enjoy working with home buyers is making sure that we're keeping them protected and working within their budget, not pushing them beyond that, beyond their comfort level, but getting a happy medium between what they're buying and their budget, and that it is a good long-term property. So celebrating that win, definitely, when that contract's signed and their offer's been accepted and those phone calls, that's the heartwarming part.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I saw hundreds of press releases every day, but I can't remember who it was from, but I saw some criticism come through from maybe it was one of the buyers agency institutes or the real estate institutes, pretty much saying, be careful of TV buyers agents and buyers advocates who may have been on a TV show once, but buying a home is a lot more than whether or not it's a nice design and whether or not the soft furnishings are nice. And I read that and I went, yeah, I sort of get that. It's there's a lot of glitz and glamour around buying property on TVs, and it's good TV. The Block, for example, good show, but it's if you watch the last series of the Block, only one of the properties sold at auction because everyone thought, overpriced, over this, over that.
Consumers are questioning it.
Consumers are questioning it. So you've got to choose your buyer's advocate and your buyer's agents really, really careful, particularly around what to purchase. You've got to be buying for the right reason, particularly if you're a property investor. Now, a karaoke room's pretty specific, right? But if that's what floats your boat and that's what you need to create a better family environment, absolutely brilliant. Do it. That's the home you're living in. But if you're a property investor, you're
not getting a return on the karaoke room.
You're not getting a return on a karaoke room unless you have got a whole bunch of students that love karaoke that want to belt out tunes every single night. So how do you go through this process logic of what to purchase? Because this is where the rubber really hits the road.
Yeah, definitely. So whether obviously with home buyers, they've got suburbs that they want to live in for personal reasons. With investors, it comes down to what we're looking at long-term, that growth, the scarcity factor, making sure we haven't got a saturation of that particular asset class. And the main thing with investors, it's going to come back to their budget. What's their budget and what can we buy that's going to give them, the best outcome for the strategy that's put in place. And that can be scary for some of them because if they live in a particular area, they're used to that, and then you're taking them out, it could be 30 kilometres away from them, and it could be an area that's had really good historical growth, not looking at hotspots. But just the idea for them not being able to drive past it and just check in on it, that can be a little bit nerve-wracking for first-time investors. So it's taking them out of that comfort level and giving them enough confidence in the data and proof of why we're looking in these areas, what makes it a good investment, and so that when we're getting to that, whether it's auction day or a negotiation, they're making informed decisions and they're comfortable.
So for you, when you're finding investment stock, outside the limitations of budgets and all that sort of stuff, where are you happy to compromise on or not compromise on? Because everyone needs to compromise at some point, irrespective of your budget. But is there anything you just go, no, we're just not touching it because of this reason?
Main roads, highways, backing onto freeways, backing onto railway lines, those really big things you can't change. You can't pick it up and change that. Properties that are newer builds where there's still a lot of new product coming because they, new homes are like a fashion. You've got the new colours and the designs, etc. But if they're rebuilding more of them in 5 years' time, we see that in a couple of particular inner rings with sub-sub townhouses, the ones that are 10-year-old now, they're really devalued because there's newer, shinier ones being built. So looking for that scarcity factor in the property is really important. Yeah,
it's tough, particularly in the inner rings, and they get a really nice place as an investor. And if you're buying off the plan, it's a different kettle of fish. But if there's more off the plan stuff coming, it means that your your property isn't scarce. It's the completely opposite, and it's not as good as what's been built right now. So this is challenging, but it's so you mainly sort of do a lot of established dwellings in established locations. That your sort of your area of specialisation.
Yeah, definitely. So if we're looking at asset class of an apartment, then I'm looking for a boutique block of apartments, something that offers a little bit of a unique spin on it. So courtyards, big size balconies, good size rooms, and then looking for what we call an A-class floor plan. So how that will also look from a tenant's point of view. So how can you maximise out of leasing that property out? If it's in the inner ring of Melbourne, you're more than likely going to have two people sharing. So does it accommodate that type of tenant?
And is that what an A-class? Well, what is an A-class floor plan? Something that's really functional.
Something really functional, nice hallway entrance, good sized living area, separate toilet. A lot of people go to renovate and want to put the toilet back in the bathroom, but if you've got a 2-bedroom apartment with, imagine 2 friends sharing, those fundamentals of having the separate toilet, having laundry facilities and an outdoor space. I mean, the balconies are not always designed for entertaining, but it's the airflow.
Yeah, okay. So it's about understanding who's going to be renting the place.
As well.
And if you're in a city, you might have students or young professionals in there.
Definitely. And that's still important for, again, the resale at the other end because that floor plan is going to be really attractive to owner-occupiers. One of my favourite asset class to buy in Melbourne is called villa units, which there's not as many in Sydney, obviously, but that's where they have their own small land component. You might have anywhere between 4 and 8 on a block. There's bigger ones, but we try and stay within that 4 to 8. And they're attractive to all demographics because they're on a single level. So you've got, you could have a family. They're typically 2-bedroom. You can get 3-bedroom. You might have a young family with 1 child, professional couple, downsizer. So in all markets, they're really attractive and you've got your own little backyard.
And so these are single dwelling with a little backyard.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a townhouse complex, but...
Yeah, so they're built more in the 60s and 70s in a lot of more what used to be our blue collar working areas.
Yeah.
Probably imagine like grandparents being in them at that time. Yeah. So, and they'll have a central driveway. Some will have a garage attached to them. Some will have a garages at the back, and they're really a mini house.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And you must work with a lot of interconnected professionals as part of supporting your clients. Accountants and financial planners and mortgage brokers. How do you find all those different professions?
Yeah, it's really...
Some of them get property, some of them don't.
That's it. It's, we, as an advocate, we can't give financial advice or legal advice, but we certainly want those clients to have the right advice from those professionals as well. Most of who we work with is really good. We're not stuck with one particular group, so we learn something every time, from the different team around them, and the investment side even more so, that they've got the right advice around their financial planning, their accounting, all of that.
Pretty important. So what's next for your business? What's the next 5 years look like?
Next 5 years, well, we'd love to continue on with hope assisting home buyers and investors and downsize the market and strategising clients, personalising their plan for their future as well. So we hope to grow a little bit more. The team has grown this year again, and we'd like to keep growing and keep helping people on their journeys.
Well, you can see you really care about what you do. It's which is good, and you find people are attracted to this profession, buyers advocacy and buyers agency. Like, they get a real kick out of the outcome. You can see you particularly like to see people make the right decisions and help them on the way.
Definitely, yeah. It's protecting the clients along the way from themselves, really, more than anything.
Yeah, which is sort of part of the process. And this is psychology, but they're some of the best. I wouldn't say amateur psychologists. Maybe there are some trained psychologists out there doing buyers agency, but the psychology of it all is a real key factor that supports the best outcome. So you keep up the good way. How do people find you or find out more about you?
Sure. So our website, so inviewpropertygroup.com.au. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, Instagram.
All that stuff. And how does it normally work? If someone sort of reaches out and says, "Hey, I'd like to learn more about Inview," what sort of takes place after that?
Sure. So they either call the phone number or or send an email across. We get back to them the same day and we schedule an appointment. A lot of people say, is that a 15-minute conversation? We go further than that. We go in depth. If it's 20 minutes, if it's half an hour, whatever they need to gain an understanding of what we can do for them, but also understanding whether we can help them on their journey. And I'm very honest with clients in that regard as well. So it can be quite a long relationship when you're searching for property. So it's important that we can work with the client, they enjoy the process that we propose to them, and that we can point them in the right direction. And if we can't, then often we will make suggestions of, where to go back to and look at the whole process before we get going.
Well, that frank, honest assessment is probably one of the best things property investors can get. So listen to your buyer's agent is the question, or buyer's advocate. Lynda, thanks for coming in.
Appreciate
you
so
coming
much
and have
for
a chat.
having me.
Yeah, it's good. I enjoyed it. Go and check these guys and girls out. Inview Property Group. I still use guys as a collective. I got told not to, but it's this crew, gang, I don't know, whatever it is, inviewpropertygroup.com.au. I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. I enjoy having chats with people that work in and around property, and it's good to see there's a passion for supporting Australians through their investment journey by these key people as part of their A team. Buyers agents, buyers advocates, property strategists, your accountant. We have them all on. We'll continue to do it on the Smart Property Investment Show. Remember to go and check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Social media, you can track us down. Smart Property HQ is where you'll find us. See you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.